Hello and welcome to the panel discussion of KSSNJ 2020 Student Forum regarding the reunification of Korea. I am Josh.
And I'm Emmanuel. And we're going to be the moderators of this panel discussion. Throughout this 90-minute session, you guys are going to have plenty of opportunities to participate, so stay focused.
We have a 10-minute video created by Eugene, Yubin, and Jacqueline, which has a thorough explanation about the topic.
This video will help you a lot when taking the Kahoot quiz in between presentations, and even minute discussions. Let's watch the video together.
After 35 years of sanguinary struggle for freedom, Korea finally gained its independence from Japan. Although it seemed to the Korean citizens as a chance to start anew, increasing complications troubled the country. Strong foreign nations from World War II began to interfere with the establishment of the newly independent country. An ideological barrier regarding the future government divided Korea into supporters of communism and democracy, thus prompting the inevitable Korean War. The perpetual war not only resulted in the deaths of nearly 5 million civilians, but also resulted in the establishment of two distinct countries within the peninsula, North Korea and South Korea. The evidence of the physical barrier between the two nations still exists, today known as the demilitarized zone. However, the loss of communication and ideas among the partitioned Koreans formed an abstract barrier, which consisted of opposing government, financial statuses, and traditional norms. Decades passed before the two countries finally showed interest in reunification when they began to engage in a series of conferences. Their goal was to result in a negotiation, hopefully. The barrier between the two nations began to disintegrate with efforts in reconciliation from both sides. On September 2, 1945, the surrender of Imperial Japan concluded World War II. However, disorder inhabited the newly liberated countries after the war. Therefore, in December of 1945, 3 representatives from the United States, Soviet Union, and Great Britain discussed the post-war issues in Moscow. Regarding the problems in Korea, they all decided to create a joint commission of the United States and the Soviet Union to help and assist the political, economic, and social progress of the Korean people. In the failure of the commission, the issue was passed to the United Nations, which ordered the specialized commission to overlook Korea's political maturation. Nevertheless, once the communist North refused to abide by the United Nations resolution, and the South formed their democratic government separate from the North, it became evident that two independent countries developed in the Korean peninsula. Only 2 years later, the tragedy between the two nations, the Korean War, consolidated the separation, and the armistice of the war on July 27, 1953, made the 38th parallel of physical division between the two countries. The separation was complete, and a rigid barrier was established between the two countries. Although the two Koreas suffered from the aftermath of the war, the governments felt an urgency to break the barrier between them. The first act of reconciliation began with the assistance of the Red Cross, which mediated the first interaction between the North and South in 1972. Although the total of 23 meetings did not succeed in unification, conferences laid a firm foundation for future political meetings. Soon after, there was a widespread surge of political movements, beginning with the momentous act of South Korea's 13th president, Roh Tae-woo, who declared the South's willingness to cooperate with the North on July 7, 1991. His proclamation was shortly followed by the Inter-Korean Exchange and Cooperation Act, which improved relations by prescribing matters necessary to promote reciprocal exchange and cooperation between the North and the South. In South Korea's presidential term since the start of its democratic government, 2 presidents strongly enforced pro-reunification policies. The first president was 15th South Korean President Kim Dae-ju, who created the prominent Sunshine Policy in 1998. His policy was designed to soften North Korea's attitude towards South Korea. Thus, he warmly reached out to the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-il. His efforts succeeded, and so the two leaders agreed to meet in Pyongyang on June 13, 2000, to take a step closer in dismantling the barrier. the two nations aimed to reach a mutual understanding to develop South-North relations. The summit marked the first interaction between the separated countries since the war. The two leaders firmly shook hands as they envisioned a peaceful reunification. After the Korean War, there was virtually no contact between the North Koreans and South Koreans. Families separated throughout Korea when fleeing in mass crowds to avoid the dangers of the war. However, due to strict border regulations, they were never able to return home. Therefore, in June of 2000, South Korean President Kim Dae-jung reached out again to North Korean leader Kim Jong-il to allow the lost families to reunite. The process consisted of 100 people from each country being able to meet and see if they could find their lost family member. The day the divided families met in Pyongyang, North Korea, both countries were drowned in tears of joy and sorrow. Most of the people now aged to be an elderly found their loved ones, but others discovered the heartbreaking news of the loss of their families and friends. Inspired by Kim Dae-jung's continuous attempts for Korea's reunification, in 2017, 19th President Moon Jae-in ardently carried on South Korea's preceding presidents' legacies. Therefore, he organized yet another summit with North Korea's leader to loosen the tension between the two nations. The 2018 summit resulted in the release of the Panmunjom Declaration on April 27, 2018, which declared a new era of peace has begun on the Korean peninsula, and it will lead to reunification. President Moon also acted as a negotiator between the United States and North Korea. The two leaders met to converse about the stalemated Korean War and the global issue of nuclear weapons. The declaration had beneficial outcomes by improving inter-Korean relations and lessening the tension between the two nations.
정부 차원에서의 그런 노력들은 정말 우리 사회를 변화시키는 데 있어서 굉장히 중요한 역할을 하고 있다라고 생각을 하고요. 이런 정부는 정부에서 할 수 있는 노력을 지속적으로 계속하고 또 민간에서는 정부가 이런 것들을 할 수 있도록 계속 푸시하고 이렇게 압력을 이렇게 또 이제 시민들이 변화될 수 있도록 그런 노력을 그러니까 정부의 노력과 민간의 노력이 함께 가야 된다라고 생각을 합니다.
While the leaders of the two governments worked to find a compromise, they also focused on uniting their economies. Both Koreas believed that the neighboring countries should prosper along with them. The first offer to help came from North Korea in 1984 when South Korea was struggling with a flood in Seoul. Hence, the North Korean government sent 370 trucks passing the 38th parallel to provide the victims of the flood with substantial amounts of rice, medicine, and clothes. The aid from North Korea was successful in melting anti-communist feelings embedded in South Koreans' minds after the war. The major cooperation between the governments occurred in 2003 with the Kaesong Industrial Complex. The goal of the project was to provide more job opportunities in North Korea and increase the production rate of South Korean corporations and break the economic gap that formed after the war.
남한에서 어떤 물건을 만들어내려면 예를 들어서 한 2,000불 이상의 노동력을 줘야 된다면 북한에서는 100불 정도면 충분하거든요. 그 정도 노동력이 싸니까 남한의 기업이 북한에 가서 물건을 만들면 그 물건 경쟁력이 있는 거예요. 기업들은 거기서 사실은 물건을 만들어서 해외에 수출을 하거나 아니면 북한에 팔거나 남한에 팔 때 이윤을 많이 남길 수 있었어요. 그럼 결국 그 돈은 남한으로 오는 거니까 남한의 경제에도 도움이 되죠. 그럼 북한은 어떠냐면 북한에서의 100불은 어마어마하게 큰 돈이에요. 우리가 생각하는 100불과는 차원이 달라요.
The accumulation of benefits given from both governments of North and South Korea over the years slowly formed cracks in the barrier without either side realizing. North Korea and South Korea have both shown interest in cooperating. For example, in the 1991 World Table Tennis Championships, the two Koreas agreed to unify the national table tennis teams. Although the decision process was long, after 22 meetings, the teams eventually collaborated for the championships. In order to avoid any disagreements, the team used Korea as their country name and they used the Korean unification flag as their national flag. Although the joint team failed to win the championships, the evident harmony and cooperation between the members proved that there was hope and peace between them, disregarding the physical barrier between them. The effects of the separation of Korea impacted the lives of millions. The pain from losing their families and watching their nation fall apart have prolonged for many excruciating years. The conflict is still ongoing due to the temporary termination of the Korean War and military threats from North Korea. However, acts of economic cooperation, diplomatic ties fixed, and exchange of cultural ideas between the two nations give the Koreans hope of reuniting their families again. Although many years have passed, historical evidence remains of how both North and South Korea attempted to reunify. Despite the various complications that arose, the divided nations are still trying, to this day, to break the barrier between them and hopefully be recognized as one country on the map where sunshine illuminates Korea's future prosperity.
Let's give a round of applause to our panelists who made this video.
I want you guys all to turn on your camera. Thank you. We will assess these knowledge during our Kahoot quizzes later.
Yes, and we are off with the history. Reunification and history are very heavy topics, but it is going to get easier and more interesting as we go down the list.
You might think that history isn't relevant to us, but it is relevant because we're going to have Kahoot quizzes, so pay close attention.
So, Yuban, if you can share with us.
So let me begin the panel discussion with the history. So hello, my name is Yubin Park, and I'm here to explain to you guys how Korea got separated into North Korea and South Korea. So many of you guys would wonder, how is history related to the unification? But in order to learn why we need to be unified, we need to learn how Korea got divided. So I'm gonna start with a simple analogy since it's a heavy and hard topic. So it's a little fun story. So once upon a time, there were orphan brothers at a town. So one day a bad neighbor came to the town claiming to become their parents. In fact, he did not treat them well, and he in fact abused them every day. After 35 days, a good news came. Their neighbor was arrested for child abuse, and 2 police officers came to take care of them. However, 2 cops began to separate 2 brothers, and they ended up fighting. And even after years, 2 brothers did not seem to understand one another. So this little like off-topic story, but there's an analogy to it. So the 2 brothers are obviously North Korea and South Korea, and the bad neighbor is Japan, who colonized Korea for 35 years. And 2 police officers are United States and Soviet Union. So you probably wonder why United States and Soviet Union are involved in this issue. But we'll figure it out through this presentation. So Korea gained its independence in August 15, 1945. And this was the date in which Japan surrendered to the Union Army. And although it was a chance to start a new nation, the foreign government began to interfere with the Korea, which were Soviet Union and the United States. 2 countries were locked in a Cold War, and they never seemed to agree to each other. So, and they tried to make Korea on their side so that they could win the Cold War, which was just an ideal war. So in this atlas, you could see the Soviet Union flag up in the north and the United States flag up down in the south. That is because when the World War II was over, United States took over the southern part of Korea, and the northern part took over the northern part of Korea. And they were based on communism, but United States was based on the democratic ideal. And in this picture, you can see that Japan flag going down, which means that Japan has no longer authority in Korean land. But then now you can see an American flag go up, not Korean flag, which is an irony. So this shows that United States began to control the South Korea and their government. So in order to resolve the post-war issues, the summits from Great Britain, United States, and Soviet Union met through a Moscow conference in which they determined to govern Korea with trusteeship. So trusteeship might be a hard term for you guys, so let me explain to you in a easier way. So United Nations was formed after World War II, and there were some well-off countries, so aka the winners of the war, and some poor countries, or just country that just gained its independence from its colonization. So those weak countries did not have their government, and the United Nations worried that there might be a chaos in that country. So what they decided, or they passed a resolution that some well-off countries, like in this case United States and Soviet Union, has the authority to go to that country and help them set up the government. And although Korea had a government called 대한민국 임시정부, formed by the national leaders of Korea, the United Nations did not recognize it as an official government and began to call for trusteeship, which meant that they needed to set up the government in Korea with the help of the United States and Soviet Union. So as a result, the United Nations and Soviet Union both created a U.S.-Soviet Union Joint Commission and began to govern Korea. So here's a quick question coming to you guys, and I'm going to leave that to the panelists.
So this question is towards the other panelists, Jacqueline, Eugene, and Justin. So was the trusteeship of United States and Soviet Union needed for Korea? What are your guys' thoughts?
I think you guys, the audience, can think about it as well and type your questions on the chat, and we'll go over later. And I think the panelists should state their stance, their beliefs, and defend it with an explanation.
I'd like to go first. So my stance is yes, because I feel like that even though it seems like people might think like, oh, why was it needed? I think it's necessary because in a sense, Korea was kind of like getting off its feet, in my opinion. So I feel like without that trusteeship, I don't know if it would have been like as developed as it is today. So that's just my opinion. I don't. I think it was necessary because if it weren't to happen, then I don't know how that Korean conflict would have been resolved.
Well, I disagree with Justin, and I don't think the trusteeship was necessary because in the beginning, the nations established the trusteeship to ensure Korea's eventual independence. However, it never resulted in the happiness of the Korean citizens as well. So I think the opposite stances of the US and Soviet Union, they didn't have a good relationship, and them on top of separating South Korea and North Korea, it only factored into Korea's eventual separation.
Yeah, I would say the trusteeship of United States and Soviet Union was not needed for Korea because, as Yuvin had mentioned in his presentation, during the colonization of Japan, Korea have developed their own government called 대한민국 임시정부, and they formed their government in 1919, way before the liberation of Korea in 1945. So throughout that period, Korea developed their government, 3 branches of government, and they had their own government set up in Shanghai because they couldn't set up their own government in Korea. But after liberation, the government could just transfer back to Korea and just start their own nation. And I think they were ready to start their own nation. But obviously United States and Soviet Union didn't think that, and that's why they had to come in. And it resulted in Korean War. So I don't think the trusteeship was needed.
To add,
You've been
I
first.
Oh, you've been, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Unmute yourself.
In my opinion, I'm kind of on the neutral stance. So like, it could have been better if one country just like did the trusteeship instead of two. So like, it's either United States or Soviet Union, but I would prefer United States because it's more based on, because communism is like kind of dead right now. Like looking at like present day, it's not working fully. So I would say United States. Well, if only United States solely did the trusteeship, it could have been Korea could have been a well-off country nowadays. And like as they mentioned before, without the help of United States, I don't think Korea could have gotten this far. And also there were like fear of communism among the Korean citizens. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Vin. I feel like without the U.S. influence, I don't know how developed Korea would have gotten. And also, like, even though I don't feel like I just want to say, I don't feel like the United States was really willing to help Korea like become an independent nation. I think it was really just because of the proxy war that they were with the Soviet Union, so that's why they used Korea as like another backfall. Um, so like obviously from an emotional standpoint, it seems like it's unfair because like it looks like that the U.S. is just using it for its political gain, which it totally does look like that. But in my conclusion, I just think that if it weren't for the United States, it's just very questionable to see like would there have been a better guaranteed like development. So yeah, that's what I'm still wondering.
Alrighty, thank you. Do you have a response to that for the opposing side, or? Well, in that case, I think we can move on to the presentation.
All right, so continuing with my presentation. So as us panelists discussed, United States and Soviet Union never agreed to each other because of the proxy war that they were engaged in. So the issue was now handed to United Nations since they thought it was more fair for the world to handle this issue rather than just two countries. So the United Nations held their general conference, and then through several resolutions, the world leaders decided to hold an election in Korea, monitored by United Nations. However, this idea was opposed by North Korea and the Soviet Union. First, because Soviet Union never proposed this idea, and it was the United States who proposed the idea of election. Second, if they hold an election, the northern part of Korea has a lesser population than southern population. So if they followed the majority rule, it was obvious that southern like ideas of southern Korea would win over the north. So they feared that United States would win Korea. So they just opposed this idea. Then United Nations, after hearing this opposition, told the Korea to hold an election only on the sides that is available, meaning only South Korea could hold an election. South Korean leaders like Kim Go and Kim Yu-sik opposed since they wanted to create a unified government. And a leader right here called Lee Seung-man, who later becomes the first president of the South Korea, wanted to create a democratic South Korea government, fearing that communism will spread in the country if they create a unified government. So eventually, the election was held in South Korea, and then the government was formed in 1948. Following month, North Korea, abided by communism ideas, established their Democratic People's Republic of Korea under the leadership of Kim Il-sung in 1948 too. So now it was evident that two countries existed in one nation. So 2 years later, in 1950, on June 25th, the war broke out with the invasion of North Korea. North Korea began to push south in the beginning, but with the help of United Nations, the South Korea was able to push all the way up to the north, as you can see in this picture. But then the communism China began to supply North Korea with the force, resulting the boundary to be set near the 38th parallel, and the barrier exists still to this day. And that's pretty much it for how Korea got separated. So now, panelists, you could lead the discussion of what the different parts of the reunification.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we will move on to our next panelist, and it is a very familiar face, if not almost identical. His name is Eugene Park. And
Eugene
Emmanuel, if
Park.
you want to.
Are we
he
not
will-
doing Kahoot?
No, we're doing it after your presentation.
Oh, okay.
So Eugene will present about the politics, which is another heavy topic, but it is really relevant because I don't know if you guys watched the news lately, but because of the things that is happening right now. And Eugene will present us about the politics.
All right. Thank you, Josh and Emmanuel. So I'm the next panelist, and I'll be talking about the impact of politics on reunification. I know politics sounds really boring. I agree with that because I find it boring too. But it's always important to know about the politics because the leaders are the one who lead our country and make decisions. So let's begin. Hi, fellow students. I'm Eugene Park, and today I'll be talking about how politics affect the relationship between North Korea and South Korea. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to ask a question to you guys. Like anyone can just answer it. So I don't know if you guys watch the news like a lot often, but when you watch the news during the presidential election, the candidates often talk about what they're gonna do with North Korea. Like the recent one between Hillary and Donald Trump, they had different points of view on like what they're gonna do in North Korea. So why do you think the candidates talk about a small country in East Asia that almost like no one knows about it? Like if you ask anyone on the street where is Korea located, probably not a lot of people will answer it correctly. So why do you think candidates talk about North Korea and South Korea when they don't even know about it that well? What I was trying to say is North Korea, America considers North Korea as their enemy because obviously North Korea threatens with nuclear weapon, and they have like different ideology, obviously communism, and the politics care about it so much because government is just not all about like handling domestic issues. They need to care about like foreign affairs. That's why there's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and different ambassadors in different countries. And that is why politics is really important in dealing the situation in Korea between North Korea and South Korea. So let's begin. So first act of like government came from South Korea in 1989, and this was passed by a South Korean Congress. And this act called 한민족 공동체 통일 방안 declares South's willingness to unify the country under their belief. And this was able to happen because of the efforts before that. So obviously after the Korean War, two countries like didn't even talk to each other because obviously they just fought a war and they would hate each other, right? But their relationship started to get better in 1984 when North Korea helped South Korea when South Korea was suffering from flood. So the relationship started to get better, and this was like the result. The South Korean Congress like declared their willingness to reunify the country. So, and then there are like different presidents and leaders who who have dealt the issue in North Korea. So I'll just like begin chronological order. So let's first begin with President Clinton and his relationship with North Korea. So when he first became the president of the United States, he tried to go strong because he wanted to impress American citizens. But later on, he kind of feared the North Korean nuclear threat. So like at first, like he went strong, but like he started to pursue the idea called hold on. So he started to pursue conversation and compromise. So he tried to reach out to North Korea and like try to settle the nuclear issue like peacefully. But that obviously didn't work. That's why former President Carter had to visit North Korea in 1994 to settle the North Korean issue. Now, let's look at South Korean president. As mentioned in the documentary, President Kim Dae-jung went to Pyongyang to have a summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-il on June 15th, year 2000. This was the first summit between South Korean president and North Korean leader. And after this summit, they formed the June 15th North-South Joint Declaration, which which basically declared that they recognize each other's government and they will try to communicate with each other and cooperate with each other to reunify the country again. And this was like one of the peaceful moments between North Korea and South Korea. Now, and while President Kim Dae-jung was in president, as you can see, President Bush was the president. He was very tough guy, and he just enacted strong policy against North Korea. Like he was a president. He was like the type of president that would like just like say, "Come on, give up your nuclear weapon." He even called Kim Jong-il evil. He said like North Korea is part of the evil side. That's how like he kind of like handled North Korean issue. And then there's President Roh Moo-hyun, who again he went to Pyongyang to meet leader Kim Jong-il in 2007, and they held another summit, and they declared 2007 North-South Summit Declaration, which declared that they're going to enact the June 15th Declaration. They're going to continue that, and also they're going to have more cooperation between the country to further bring back the relationship. And then after Roh Moo-hyun, President Barack Obama became the president of the United States. He enacted patience in this regard. So he didn't want any issues in Korean Peninsula, and that is why, like, he didn't want that. Like, he didn't enact like strong policy like President Bush. So that's why when North Korea attacked South Korea in 2010, called Yeonpyeongdo attack, Obama like had to stop South Korean president from attacking back because he didn't want any further problem in Korea. Now this like the most fun part, I guess, because it's like current issue. So currently, Moon Jae-in is the South Korean president. Kim Jong-un is basically the leader, and President Trump is in charge of the United States right now. So 2018 was like a year for like, it was the best year for like all three countries because there were 3 summits between South Korean president and North Korean leader. And also there are 2 summits between United States and North Korea. So let me first talk about President Moon Jae-in. He tried to make a peaceful relationship between North Korea and South Korea. That's why he held 3 summits with North Korean leader. First one was Panmunjom Declaration. It took place on April 27th, and 2 leaders passed Panmunjom Declaration, which promised peace in Korean Peninsula. Then it was followed by the Pyongyang Joint Declaration on September 19th, and this promised further interaction between the 2 countries, like in cultural field and like sports field and etc. Similarly, President Trump also held a summit with North Korean leader, but it took place in Singapore. And in 2018, that it was the first summit between the United States president and North Korean leader. And this one was more successful because two leaders agreed on certain terms, and they agreed that they're gonna continue. They're gonna follow Panmunjom Declaration and try to settle the denuclearization of North Korea more in a peaceful way. However, the second one, 2019 Hanoi Summit, was really not successful because even the two leaders met, they couldn't settle on the denuclearization of North Korea. That's why after the summit, two countries they didn't even talk to each other after the summit, and the relationship just went back. So as you can see, President Trump is very frustrated, and it kind of shows the failure of this summit. So currently, there's a huge conflict in Korean Peninsula right now. North Korea just recently destroyed the joint communication office, and North Korea just declared that South Korea is their main enemy. So the relationship is like really tense, and some people fear that it's going back, like the relationship going back to like 60s, 70s when they used to be like enemies. However, both countries have gone through like many conflicts over many decades, and every time they have conflicts, they try to resolve the conflict by holding summits and talking to each other. So I believe that communication between the leaders is key for reunification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we can finally move on to our first Kahoot quiz.
Guys, we're done with like the boring stuff, so we can focus back. I'll wait a few minutes. Alright, I think that's most of the people, so I'm gonna start. Alright. right, congratulations. Two presenters.
Yeah, congrats for really being the experts of your craft.
Yeah, actually, congratulations, Alex Beck, on
Yes, sir.
being the first.
Thank you for paying attention.
Yes. And now I think that we can move on to the third presenter, Jacqueline Kim. Can you tell us a little bit about what her presentation is all about?
She will present us about the cultural aspect of reunification, which is better than politics and history.
I would also agree. So, Jacqueline, you have the stage.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I hope so. Hello. As Yujin and Yubin finished talking about the historical and political aspects of the Korean reunification, I'm going to be talking about the cultural ways North Korea and South Korea have shown interest in reunification. And some of these events may be familiar to you all, but some of these events may not. Well, to begin, in February of 1991, North Korea and South Korea agreed to create Korea's first unified women's table tennis team to compete at the 1991 World Table Tennis Championships. But this process was not easy because it took a total of 22 meetings between the two Koreas to finalize it. And the unified team, they used Korea as their country name in Korean and English to avoid Joseon or Hangul. And they also used the Korean unification flag shown on the right there, as their national flag, and the folk song Arirang as their national anthem. The joint delegation consisted of 62 members, 31 athletes from each nation, and after defeating the supposed unbeatable Chinese team, the team was like a big sensation in both Koreas. And their success, it led to speculation of how their collaboration was very beneficial to both nations, and it also alluded to Korea's future reunification. Next, as you may all know, due to the armistice of the Korean War, North and South Korea banned millions of their citizens from visiting each other's territories. And as a result, many families were separated and they couldn't even see each other. Only in June of 2000, decades after the Korean War, South Korean President Kim Dae-jung, he reached out to North Korean leader Kim Jong-il, and after the summit that Yujin discussed previously, the two countries finally organized an event where the divided Korean families, they could reunite at the Diamond Resort in Pyongyang, North Korea. These reunions were administered by authorities such as the Red Cross, and the process consisted of 100 people. They were chosen randomly from a lottery system and from each country to attend the reunion and see if they could find a lost member. As shown in the photographs above, these Koreans, as you can see, they were in their 70s or older, and also the reunions, they typically lasted for 3 days. However, once one has attended the reunion, they were unable to apply for another one. So basically, they had to rely on luck to find their missing family member in one try. While some families cried of joy and happiness from finding their beloved ones, others only discovered the heartbreaking news of the loss or death of their families and friends. Now, another evidence for the Korean reunification is shown through Mount Kumgang's tourism, Kumgangsan. And Mount Kumgang is a mountain range that runs for about 50 kilometers on the east coast of Gangwon-do, North Korea. And it also stands as a symbolism of cultural unity in Korea. Mount Kumgang is known for its scenic beauty since ancient times, and it's a source for different works of art. Koreans have perceived Kumgangsan as their muse since well before the Middle Ages, and the division of the Korean Peninsula in 1950, it resulted in the South Korean people. They were unable to find themselves visiting their beloved mountain, while the North Koreans could. However, starting in 1998, South Korean tourists were allowed to visit Mount Kumgang, initially traveling by cruise ship, but later more commonly by coach. And over the years, the number of tourists have increased significantly. By 2002, almost 500,000 South Koreans visited Mount Kumgang. The tourism of Mount Kumgang allowed Koreans to unite culturally and admire the beautiful landscape and nature in their nation. Moving on, the next way that the Koreas united was through their sports teams. In January of 2018, South Korea's women's national ice hockey team collaborated with the national ice hockey team from North Korea to form a unified Korean national ice hockey team for the Winter Olympics. And as you may all know, the 2018 Olympics was held in Pyeongchang, South Korea, and this event proved the unity and harmony of Korea as a whole to the whole globe. Similar to the 1991 World Table Tennis Championships, the team used the folk song Arirang as their national anthem. In this event, although the joint team failed to win the match, the peace and cooperation among the members in the ice hockey team, it delivered a message of hope and peace to the entire world. And this is a photograph of the joint of North Koreans and South Koreans marching together in the opening ceremony of the 2018 Olympics, and they're waving the Korean unification flag. The final and possibly most popular event that North Korea and South Korea showed their cooperation was through the 2-hour concert called Spring is Coming. The concert was held by South Korean K-pop singers for North Koreans, including Kim Jong-un and his wife. The concert was held in Pyongyang, North Korea, and this was the first time that a North Korean leader had attended a South Korean performance. And a total of 190 South Koreans traveled to North Korea, including the artists, the government officials, and also journalists. The concert featured 11 South Korean artists, including Cho Young-pil, Isunny, 소녀시대 Seohyun, Baek Ji-young, and K-pop girl group Red Velvet. The concert is seen as an act of cultural diplomacy, serving to share both nations' cultural and musical talents. Well, these are some events in the past that speculated to Korea's future reunification culturally. However, there are many more events that it did allude as well. And as a result, the accumulation of these little acts between the two nations have shown hope for Korea's future prosperity. Thank you for listening, and here's a debate question that the panel moderators will discuss.
So the question is, do you think that if more cultural...
Sorry.
I cannot see the question. So, like I was saying, the question is, do you think that if more cultural events like the one shown in the presentation are organized and held, would reunification be possible? Panelists, if you can say your responses to that.
In my opinion, I think it has the least effect on the reunification, because by just sharing their songs, like I don't think it will make a huge difference in melting down like North Koreans' feeling. I mean, although it might have like some effect, like they could learn South Korean culture and like be more like unified, I guess, in a cultural way. Like I don't think it will be the like a key in reunification. I think like stronger acts of political like field would be much better in reunification.
I think overall, cultural events would be like helpful. But like you've been said, I think it wouldn't have a huge effect just because of the idea that even if like we kept doing that, which is still a good thing because we're still being in contact with one another, I don't think that's really popular of a move when you like publicize that compared to like a huge political declaration of like we're reunifying type of thing. Though I do like the idea because that is how we like like ease tensions with each other. I think we should also culminate that with like bigger steps.
Yeah, I agree with Justin. Yeah, like and Euban, like like the idea of like unifying like sports team and like visiting each other's country and like performing, like it might melt down like anti like feelings in both countries, but like I don't think it'd be like strong enough to like reunify the country. Like even if more events happened, it wouldn't have like reunified the country because those are just like events that just happen and then just everyone forget about it. So that's my view.
I think that the accumulation of more cultural events, it will kind of improve Korea as a whole, and it will prove also to the world how Korea was capable of uniting. And like if they do reunify like sports teams when they're competing in like the Olympics again, they'll be since they're competing under one name, Korea, they'll also have more skilled and talented athletes. And, you know, the success of the Olympics is also a big deal. But as the rest of the panelists said, like, it won't make a big impact, but it'll definitely factor into the ultimate reunification.
As
So
a
I just want to,
moderator, wait,
yeah,
as a moderator, I wanted to ask the panelists one question. You think political reunification of becoming a one country is a perfect reunification? Don't you think cultural aspect must be in that reunification process to make a thorough change into a one country from two different societies? What do you think?
Yeah, that for sure, because say 7 years means that there's a lot of change in our language, our cultural. Like obviously, like North Korea doesn't have like K-pop as we do, so like obviously the culture is different, and it might be hard if just like political aspect, like political reunification occurs, and like North Korean people will have hard time like cooperating with the southern South Korean people because obviously they live a different lifestyle. But I think politically reunification must come first before like then we could talk about cultural reunification too. I like the tries, but like I don't think it will like do anything to reunification though.
I think a culture. I agree. I think political needs to come like at the forefront, but then we also have to incorporate the cultural aspect because um, like that's the main factor into easing like to make it a smooth and thorough like reunification. That is would be like the second effect because like there's people like in Korea that like in South Korea that have like this really harsh sentiment. I guess you could say it on both sides that they don't really have like good feelings of one another because after they split. So if it was just political only with no cultural diffusion at all, then not only would the languages be different just from like from a concrete standpoint, but emotionally they wouldn't like each other. So there could be like another possibility of just splitting up again, which no one wants to go through. So I think cultural aspects need to be considered right after we make a right political move.
so I just want to bounce off of that and ask. I know that reunification sounds very good, but there are some factors that make it very hard, and there are big conflicts, even right now in current events. So, do you guys agree that we should reunify soon? Yes or no? And do you guys think that reunification is even possible in our generation?
Um, that's like kind of like a debatable question because like from like by just like by like reflecting on like the past issues and like recent like events, I don't think it's like possible to like reunify the country like completely like just make like a one country because I don't think it's possible because obviously two countries have been separated for like 70 years and like I've seen a video like experts video on like reunification and that person said it's probably hard to like make a like form of one government and just make a one country, because like that person used like this analogy with using fruits. So like there was like an apple and it was cut in half, and after 7 years, one was really bad, one was like well preserved, but still it wasn't like it was it was more preserved than the other one. So when they try to put it back, it's not the same apple as it was before. So I don't think unification will be possible in our generation or the next generation. But like what I think is that if you like make more interaction happen between the two countries, it will become like a European Union where like you can like kind of go to the other country, like visit and like interact, but just that it's not the same country.
I think that's where the cultural aspect comes in. Like, if we keep being in touch more, I think that trend will still be present. So when the time comes to reunify and like actually sit down and like have talks about it, I think it would just be a much like a smoother process. The only thing that I have like saying that we can't reunify now is like I don't think we can in our generation. It's just because like if you like surveys show, because I did a research paper on this, and like a lot of the youth, like our age, doesn't really care about it because they don't see any benefit because it doesn't affect them. Whereas like if you go into like the older generations, like the 70s, the 80s, like they really want to see that split because they lived through that Korean War generation. So they want to see that come back to normal. But I feel like just society is just drifting away from that trend because it's just it's just people just don't care. Let's just put it that way. It's not even that. It's not even because it's just hard to understand. It's just that like they don't see anything that affects them. So in turn, they don't really like they have no like attention towards that. I really hope that it happens as soon as possible because what like if like the current presidents right now set a foundation, at least by the time in like maybe like 40, 50 years we can come back to it and have a better stronghold. So I feel like we should keep trying, but eventually like reunification I think is going to be very gradual, so I feel like that's going to take a longer time, and I don't think it'll happen in our generation.
Agreeing with Justin, because like we like a lot of Koreans use like Germany as an example of reunification because they were the country that reunified after World War II, and they said there were like although they try to like make each country like similar in like economic and cultural way, they still had trouble when they reunified, and that was only like 40 years because they got reunified in like 1990s. So it was only like 40 years after the war, but now it's like 70 years. Now there's so many differences. So like we gotta like fill in that gap between the two countries before we could reunify like better. But looking at the current condition right now and like the economic part of North Korea and South Korea, there's so much burden that South Korea needs to carry if they reunify right now. So what I believe is that like North Korea should improve their economy, or like we should help them, and then we could reunify. But I think it will take a longer time to do so.
All right,
And
thank
plus,
you.
and like I think
All right, your
the
final statement.
Kim's like dynasty, like in North Korea, like the Kim Jong-un's family, I think they must like resign their power before we could do so, because all they do is try to keep their power, and then I don't think it's possible if we reunify. So.
All right, we'll finalize this discussion because of the timing concerns. And guys, turning off your camera or leaving your camera just on, it's pretty disrespectful to the ones who prepared this for hours. So guys, don't do that. All right, let's I just wanted to make that comment. Let's move on to the final presentation.
Yeah, off of that note, thank you guys for all those presentations, and finally we have our last presenter, Justin. And he will be talking about the Korean economy. Did you want to make a comment on that, Emmanuel, before we begin?
No, this probably going to be the best, I guess, the most interesting presentation. So guys, enjoy it.
Can you guys hear me? Like,
Yep.
do I need to speak louder or?
No, you're good.
All right, now sorry, I had to connect to my phone. But I'm just gonna leave it at that. All right. See how this works. Share computer sound. All right. All right, ready? Lift off. Hello, and welcome. I will be teaching you about the economic benefits of a reunified Korea. Okay, so this is my main general format of this presentation, the pros and the cons. Very simple, but I just want to start off with a little mini quiz. So you guys can just type your answers in the chat. They're very simple questions. But Josh, if you can like just do and like annotate my screen, if you will. Can you just test it out right now if it works?
Yeah, sure thing.
All right.
Is that,
All right.
is that good?
Good. Yeah. Okay. Now I'll be going to the first question. All right. Who is the North Korean leader? It's a very tough question. Josh, you want to pick your answer? Okay. All right. All right. Well, now I'm just gonna get to the answer real quick. Okay. So the answer, Kim Jong-un. All right. Pretty easy. All right. So far. Okay. You guys hang in there. All right. So let's go to the next question. What's the word economy in Korean? 재량, 사업, or 경제? And Josh, I think you're economy. Okay. All right, so it's not number one. It's not 재량. 재량 is like discretion, judgment. It's not 사업. 사업 is like business, but it's 경제. It's number 3. All right. Finally, who said this quote? Money matters. I don't have like a multiple choice, so like you guys can just pick out anything. All right. Albert Einstein. All right. Okay. Seeing some nice answers over here. Okay, well, this is basically a trick question. I said it. The reason why I said it, I put it here because, to be very honest, like, even in life, we know that money, like, we're taught that money doesn't buy us anything, right? But, we can't steer away from it. It's such a key component in our functioning world. Like, when you make, like, deals, there is no deal without money, right? Like, if I go to a store and I buy fruit, I have to pay up, or else, I won't get that fruit, right? So now we're going to go back and we're going to talk about the drawbacks. So now in the chat, I want you guys to guess how much in total would reunification cost. Josh, you can write your answer. You guys don't have to like write out all the zeros. You can just write like millions, billions, trillions, whatever. Okay. Wow, Eugene, that's a nice answer. Okay. Oh, Dennis, haven't seen you in a while. All right, $100,000. All right, $1 million. Okay, Josh, can you erase that annotation, please? All right, so this is a study, right? This is from the Korean National Budget Office. It's called the 국회예산 정책처, and it's a huge margin, right? $25 billion to a whopping $3.5 trillion. That's weird, right? Like, why is that? Well, the problem with this is that even like with this huge price estimate range, there's so many factors that go into reunification. It's not that simple. Things like, oh, how much aid are we going to need to assist North Korea? What other supplies do we need? How are we going to transport stuff through DMZ? That all requires money. So even with this estimate from the government, from the Korean government, this might not even be accurate due to so many uncertainties. So that is one fear. And now the second fear I'm going to talk about is taxes. So we know that South Korea is very well developed compared to its northern counterpart, right? Everyone can agree on that, right? So the main fear basically is that South Korean citizens is essentially just going to get taxed more. Why you might ask like, oh, why can't we just ask foreign aid? Well, I mean, it's not easy. It's really not that simple. Just saying, hey, United States, can you pay like $4 trillion like right away? It just doesn't work like that. And also, if we were to loan from the IMF, for example, how compensating for that is just really hard. So the one easiest way to do it is to basically have a heavier tax on South Korean citizens. And I'm going to be playing this YouTube video from Asian Boss. And basically, this guy interviewed like South Korean citizens, and you'll basically just hear their opinions on this.
통일이 경제적으로 좀 부담이 될 수도 있다라고 생각하는 사람도 많은 것 같아요. 생각하시기에 우리나라 경제가 통일을 감당할 수 있을 만큼 발전했다라고 생각하시나요?
아직 그만큼 발전은 안 된 것 같아요.
지금의 상황에서도 그렇게 경제 상황이 좋은 편은 아니라고 봤을 때 이제 남쪽에 있는 국민들이 안고 가야 될 경제적인 부담은 훨씬 더 커질 것 같아요. 지금보다도. 그래서 더 많은 세금과 뭐 여러 가지 일들이 생각이 나오면 지금보다 경제는 좀 더 나빠지지 않을까라는 생각에 저도 경제에 대한 부분은 좀 우려스럽게 생각을 하고 있습니다.
경제적으로 어렵다 생각은 하지 않는데 아무래도 생활의 질이 지금 우리가 누리고 있는 것을 많이 못 누리게 될 것 같아서 그게 좀 걱정이 됩니다.
그러니까 뭐 그게 어떤 이유에서 그런 거죠?
우선 그 기본적으로 드는 생활비에도 저희가 사용하는 여가 문화 쪽으로 사용하는 비용도 만만치 않게 많은데 그런 비용이 많이 감소될 것 같기 때문에 생활의 질이 좀 떨어지지 않을까 생각합니다.
그러니까 통일을 해서 북한 사람들 지원해주면 그것 때문에 남한 사람들의 삶의 질이 떨어지기 때문에 반대한다 이런 말씀이신 거군요.
Okay. So basically to summarize, there's a lot of worry that goes into just taxes because they're already spending so much money on like their own lifestyle, raising their kids, like especially when like Hagwon-bi and like all that stuff, to raise their child, and on top of that, they're spending all this other money on just their daily expenses. So with that tax, they might not be able to have that type of money to like basically just use it in their everyday life because they're just benefiting and investing so much into Korean reunification. And there's also another fear that the economy might struggle, even though South Korea is doing so well right now. With that extra tax, there might be a little fluctuation. So that's another big fear. But now I want to talk about the pros, the benefits. Before I get started, though, I'm going to talk about just the economies of both countries. So South Korea, an economic superpower. So the current GDP, if you see right here, it's a whopping 1.6 trillion US dollars. That ranks itself as one of the top 15 economies in the world. But the question is, how did we get there? Because after the Korean War, South Korea was very underdeveloped. It was a very poor economy that was mainly for like farming. It was an agrarian society, and it heavily depended on aid. However, with the next 30 to 40 years, with the help of new military leadership, it basically helped the nation to get off its feet, and it committed itself to a lot of other financial issues, what became known as the miracle on the Kumgang, or a miracle on the Han River. All right, so I'm going to show you this graph, and this is from Agnes Madison. And this talks about basically GDP per capita growth in North and South Korea. So if you guys don't know what per capita is, GDP per capita is basically the total GDP, the real GDP, divided by its population. Okay, so as you can see, over the years, South Korea has increased at an average rate of about 9%. That is a lot. That means its per capita went from less than $2,000, and now this is 2008, but in our current world today, they're at least about $31,000 per capita, which is really high. Now, and in those years, we haven't just grown in population, but with that GDP, we also there's other things that factored in, things like new companies and tech industries coming up, big brand names such as Samsung, Kia, LG. That's just to name a few. The reason why I'm saying this though is because South Korea has that experience in overcoming its economic downfalls, as you see in this trend right here. South Korea really showed that significant increase in this blue line. So with its global influence today, it's just so reasonable that South Korea should reunify with the North from an economic standpoint. All right, now let's talk about North Korea, the struggle. So looking at their GDP, it's only $28 billion. If you do the math, that's less than 2% of South Korea's GDP. It's funny to say that though, because after the Korean War, they started out pretty good. They started out okay, but then their economy eventually tanked. It became really stagnant because they tried to prioritize their nuclear arsenal and their defense economy. That's when Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-un's grandfather, he prioritized this thing called military first politics. which also focused on heavy industrial metals such as iron and steel. And in today's world, we see North Korean citizens as not only desensitized to the outside world, but they're also poor in malnutrition. So if we were to reunify them, they're going to be needing a lot of our help. And that's where the fear of the tax comes in, because we really need to send them a lot of humanitarian aid and to help them rebolster its economy. Okay, so what if we did reunify? What could possibly be the benefits? So now I want to go over and I want to talk about population. Now, we know that if Korean reunification occurs, it's really obvious to say that there would be an increase in population. It's estimated that the new population is going to be around 80 million people per se. But what is the point? Like, what's so good about that? Well, with an increased population, more labor means more jobs. More jobs means more money. And even though there's a fear that North Korean citizens might not be that skilled in the workforce, they can be initially hired for very cheap, right? So we hire them for very cheap, and then eventually they're going to contribute to a developing economy. And then in just a matter of years, they too will also be very skilled in the workforce. And with this, according to the Global Times, there are estimates showing that the new GDP will increase about a whopping 50% in the next decades following reunification. And also the new GDP would reach about 2.1 trillion US dollars. And to put that into perspective, that GDP is higher than both Brazil and Canada, but countries that are like huge. And we're like a really tiny, small peninsula, but we can produce way more GDP than that. Okay, now I want to talk about resources. So North Korea apparently has a huge amount of natural resources that is worth about 6 trillion US dollars. I want to play you another clip from Asian Boss. This is a separate video. This man interviews 3 North Korean defectors. Defectors are like those people from North Korea who escaped to the South. They're going to explain this issue.
한국에서 길거리 인터뷰를 했었을 때 한국 사람들이 많은 게 북한에는 뭐 자원이 없다. 뭐 개발도 안 됐지만 뭐 자원이 없는데 뭐 가서 뭐 우리가 뭘 할 수 있겠냐. 오히려 통일 비용만 더 많이 나온다. 그런데 해외 언론에 접하는 거는 아니다. 지금 북한 그 땅 밑에는 정말 상상을 초월하는 뭐 6천조 뭐 규모의 자원이 이제 있다. 혹시 그거에 대해서 좀 아시나요?
혹시 이런 이제 한국에도 이런 데가 있는지 모르겠는데 저는 어릴 때 금 캐러 많이 다녔었어요. 그러면은 정말 저희 집 뒷산인데도 불구하고 이제 그 조그마한 굴을 캐도 거기에서는 이제 그래도 어마어마한 금이 나오곤 했었어요. 그러니까 그것만을 놓고 보더라도 이거는 자원에 대해서 어느 정도 이해가 가지 않을까 생각돼요.
북한 정부에서
네.
군사력을 이거를 지원하려고 이미 다 파냈거나 그러진 않았을까요?
개발이 그러니까 뭔가 이제 거기에 이제 투입되는 뭔가가 있어야만 이제 캐낼 수 있는데 그럴 만큼 그러니까 그 많은 걸
그렇죠,
기술도
기술.
없었고 이때까지 뭐 핵무기 만드느라 전전했고 먹고 살기 힘들어서 그리고 저는 그 핸드폰 만들 때 들어가는 뭐 금속이 있다고 하더라고요. 그게 엄청 비싸고 근데 그게 북한에 엄청 많이 있다고 하더라고요.
저희 고장에는 철광석이 굉장히 많았어요. 근데 중국에서 하루에 한 막 몇백 대의 그 큰 트럭이 몇 톤짜리 트럭이 와서 그거를 매일 실어 갔거든요. 근데 매일 실어 갔는데 그 축도 안 날 정도로 많았어요.
Basically, if you guys weren't paying attention, so they have all these natural resources, right? But they can't use it because they don't have that technology. But think about us. We have that technology, right? We're so advanced in that industry. And with our help, we can use that resource for good use. And instead of just selling it off to China for very cheap, we can use that and make a lot more money. All right, so now I want to talk about the military. So right now, according to the interpreter, South Korea requires, quote, all male South Koreans aged 18 to 35 undertake mandatory military service. With Korea as a unified nation, though, the military will expand multifold with North Korea's extensive army, and it will abolish the mandatory requirement. With the addition of its manpower and its nuclear arsenal, less money will be spent on the national budget, and more money will be allocated to things like welfare, technology, and health. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Korean discount. So by definition, Korean discount is an investment term, and it refers to the stock value of Korean companies being undervalued compared with that of other Asian countries. So to simplify that definition, let's say I was an investor, right? And so since I'm like from America and I'm trying to invest in Korea, I'm basically afraid to invest there because with the current political situation right now, there's a possibility that like tensions get more hostile and World War III could occur. So that's why investors call that stocks like a high risk. However, if we reunify, there would be no more geopolitical tensions to worry about, and the Korean market can expand and become a risk-free investment. So that'll increase our global market share by who knows what and boost our economy, which is such a win-win situation. Okay, so this is basically the mini debate. I heard that we're going to skip this, so I'll just move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is my opinion. So why should we reunify? I can go on with more benefits, but I'll just summarize it with this. The reason why reunification is necessary in terms of economy, because according to DW magazine, in the words of a German ambassador to South Korea, Rolf Maffeo, the benefits outweigh the costs. To summarize, Korea will basically become a more stable and efficient economy. And there's so many benefits that will happen in the future, even though initially there might be such a huge downfall in economic growth. Eventually, over time, we will come out as a much stronger and more of a global superpower than ever before. So in conclusion, I think it's worth taking the risk. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you.
All right. I think we can all give a round of applause for our 4 panelists. Thank you so much for preparing the presentations. There was a Kahoot ready for the 2 presentations prior, but because of time, I don't think that we can move forward with the Kahoots. So that will be it for today. I also want to shout out Emmanuel Kim. It is right about 4 a.m. around, and he's been up since who knows when. So let's give a round of applause to him as well. Great work by Emmanuel Kim. And you guys don't have to clap for me. It's totally okay. But anyways, that'll be it for today. And I hope to see you guys tomorrow again. So thank you guys.